To this day, I still tremble. My entire being shakes when I recall the strange events I went through. I remember my friends, that cursed meal, and that bizarre scent of incense we smelled in that place. It wasn't a strange scent to us when we entered the house because we always smelled it on our friend Maya. It wasn't a bad scent, but at the same time, it wasn't pleasant or easy to accept. I'm here today to tell you my story, not because I want to remember it, or because it's easy to recall the details. On the contrary, I never wanted to remember what happened, but I feel like the curse of what I experienced hasn't ended yet. One day, this curse might reach other people who are living a peaceful life, only to have it completely destroyed, just as mine and my friends' lives were, all because of a single moment of human weakness. Hello everyone, I'm Jenny, and I'm here to tell you a true horror story. Grab your snacks, dim the lights, and let's dive into the nightmare, because this story is personal. Everything began during my second semester at university. Perhaps I was destined to live through this because my whole life had followed a very specific pattern until that year. That was the year I decided to change my life, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I had just stayed as I was. I was always an isolated person. I grew up as an only child with older parents who raised me to be cautious, silent, and calm. This shaped my personality as I grew up. To be honest, I liked it that way. I didn't blame my parents. I just didn't like interacting with people. More accurately, I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid of reaching out and being met with coldness or feeling like a burden, so I remained a loner until I reached university. I had no true friends, and that never bothered me. I was happy. All my energy went into my studies. I was what they call a nerd. This continued through my first semester of university. I spent it alone. It's a feeling that only those who have lived it can truly understand. Eventually, I started feeling that life was becoming boring. Every day looked like the last. I would watch other girls in the university walking together, laughing and talking during breaks, and I secretly wished for that kind of trivial joy. My life was too serious, too focused on grades. Then came that day in the cafeteria. I was sitting at my usual table, eating and scrolling through my phone when everything changed. Maya walked in. She was in my year, and I had seen her a few times before. She was social, popular, and knew everyone. She didn't wait for people to come to her. She approached them, except for me, of course. She looked like an ordinary student, nothing special about her appearance. The only thing that made her stand out at that moment was that she chose to come to my table. I felt her lightly tap on the table while I was pretending not to see her. I looked up and she said, "Hi, can I sit with you? All the tables are full." I looked around. The cafeteria was almost empty. I told her, but the tables are empty. She gave me a very kind smile and said, "True, but honestly, I just wanted to get to know you, if you don't mind." I had no choice but to say, "Go ahead," as someone not used to social graces. I felt anxious and had no intention of starting a conversation, but she spoke first. She asked for my name. I told her it was Lila. She smiled and said, "I'm Maya. Nice to meet you, Lila. Why do you always sit alone? You can talk to me. Consider me a passing stranger you'll never see again." It was an awkward moment, and I told her, "Don't you think you're being a bit creepy?" She laughed and said, "Maybe a lot, and you have every right to be wary, but what would I want from you? You don't have any connections I can use. Honestly, Lila, I used to be just like you. I struggled with loneliness after a tragedy in my life. I lost my entire family in a car accident. I ended up living with my grandmother, and I felt a terrifying void. I've lived through dark days, so I know what it's like to be in that shadows. I wanted to reach out and help you, just as I helped myself." Her words were beautiful. They touched something deep inside me that had been dormant for years. I started to feel comfortable with her, and without realizing it, I began sharing things with her. Maya was the gateway to a 180-degree change in my personality. She introduced me to her group of friends, a group she had recently met herself. They became my group, my friends. Finally, after all those years, I could say I had friends. Maya was the key to my new life. She introduced me to her circle, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged. Our group was now 6: Maya, Sarah, Chloe, Elena, Mia, and me, Lila. We became like sisters. We discovered we had so much in common, and each of us carried a hidden wound that Maya somehow managed to heal. She had this incredible ability to convince us that our problems were trivial, making us feel better with just a few words. Those days were the happiest of my life. I started waking up with a smile, excited to go to university just to see them. I wanted to capture every moment, every laugh. We felt so safe with Maya, as if she were a shield protecting us from the world. We trusted her blindly. If she had told us to walk into a fire, we would have believed she had a wise reason for it. That's how much we admired her. After our midterm exams, Maya insisted on inviting us to her home for dinner to celebrate our hard work. We didn't even think about saying no. We all met there. It was a pleasant building, about 3 stories high. We arrived late in the afternoon, and Maya welcomed us with open arms. The atmosphere was great, but that same scent of incense was everywhere, thick and heavy in the air. Around 8 p.m., we sat down for the meal Maya had prepared. The food was strange. The meat was cut into odd shapes, and Maya claimed it was a special traditional recipe. To be honest, it was tough and hard to swallow. We tried to act like we enjoyed it to be polite, but I could see the unease on my friends' faces. We spent the evening chatting and laughing, trying to ignore the discomfort. Suddenly, the mood shifted. Mia's phone rang. It was her father telling her he was outside and she had to leave immediately. She said her goodbyes and left. Not 5 minutes later, Sarah's phone rang. I was watching Sarah closely. Her face turned pale, and she started whispering into the phone, covering her mouth as if she didn't want us to hear. When she hung up, she looked terrified. She said, "Girls, we have to leave right now. It's getting late." We were confused. We had planned to stay longer, but we couldn't argue since she was our ride home. Maya tried to convince us to stay, but Sarah was firm. She looked shaken. We quickly said our goodbyes to Maya and headed for the exit. As we walked out of the apartment, we expected to see the same building we entered a few hours ago. But the moment we stepped outside, we froze. The world didn't feel safe anymore. Just minutes ago, we were happy and warm, but now, Sarah, Chloe, Alina, and I were trembling with pure terror. The house we were looking at from the outside was not the house we entered in the afternoon. When we arrived, it was a modern 3-story building. But now, in the dark, it had transformed into an old, traditional-style house with a long, creepy corridor leading to the street. I was certain we had exited through a different door than the one we used to enter, and the path was completely different. We stood there, 4 of us, unable to comprehend how we all missed this. It was impossible. Sarah finally spoke, her voice shaking. She told us that the call she received was from Mia. Mia was the one who noticed the change first because of her father. When he arrived to pick her up, he looked at his GPS and then at the house and said, "What is this? Is this the right place? The house looks completely different." Mia realized then that while the location was correct, the building itself had physically changed. That's why Sarah rushed us out. We stood there staring at the house. Chloe said, "Sarah, is this real? Or am I hallucinating?" Sarah replied, "You're not hallucinating. This is not the building from this afternoon." Elena tried to find a logical excuse, saying maybe it was just the shadows and the darkness, but we all knew the truth. It wasn't a trick of the light. I reminded the girls of something strange. Remember when the sun was setting and Maya suddenly insisted on going to a back room to check on her mother? We told her to stay, but she refused. Now looking back, She disappeared right at twilight and didn't return until the transition was complete. Was that a sign? A ritual? The girl's eyes filled with fear. We didn't say another word. We ran to Sarah's car and drove away as fast as we could. The next day, our fear turned into total panic. Maya didn't show up at the university. We tried to text her, but the messages wouldn't deliver. We tried to call, but the number was disconnected. We searched for her number online, and it was like it never existed. For days, Maya vanished as if she were a ghost. Even the professors started asking about her, since we were her only friends. The student affairs office called us in, asking if we had contact info for her family. We agreed not to tell them we had visited her house. We were too terrified to even point it out on a map. But then, the university checked her official files. And that's when things got truly impossible. Her ID number was missing from the system. Her student records, her files, everything was being wiped away, as if Maya had never been a student there at all. A week passed, and then the nightmare truly began. It was a total collapse that affected everyone who knew Maya. The first victim was Elena. We started noticing her arriving at the university looking exhausted. When we questioned her, she confessed she couldn't sleep. She was having recurring nightmares about Maya. Nightmares where Maya would tear off her own face and throw it at Elena. The horror didn't stay in her dreams. One day, Elena jumped out of her lecture, screaming in pure terror. Her classmates said she pointed at the ceiling and shrieked, "Maya is up there! She's tearing her face off! Look at her!" But there was nothing there. Only Elena could see it. She looked like she hadn't slept for weeks. She told us Maya was visiting her while she was awake too, whispering terrifying things, demanding she hurt people or herself. Eventually, Elena lost her mind. She tried to harm her younger sister, and her family had to place her in a psychiatric hospital. Maya had claimed her first victim. We were paralyzed with fear, knowing we were next. The danger was closing in. One day, we heard blood-curdling screams echoing through the university hallways. We ran toward the sound and found it coming from the restrooms. It was our friend, Chloe. She had wrapped her headphone cable tightly around her neck, trying to hang herself. As people tried to save her, she was laughing hysterically, screaming, "Let me go! Let me do what Maya asked! Let me go to where she is, waiting for me!" Chloe survived, but she was never the same. She became a shell of a person, withdrawn and silent. Her family had to take her out of university. Whenever we tried to check on her, her sisters could only ask us to pray for her recovery. She was gone. Sarah was the bravest among us, but her fate wasn't much better. She began seeing shadows crawling out of the walls of her house, shadows that would surround her and paralyze her body. One morning, she woke up to find her bed covered in her own hair. She had gone completely bald overnight. Even worse, deep wounds were carved into her back, like branding marks. Her family realized this wasn't natural. They took her to a spiritual healer who told them she was under a massive curse, a consumed spell from something she had eaten. But no matter what they tried, the curse seemed to be locked inside her, refusing to leave. Only Mia and I remained untouched, but we were living in a constant state of panic. Waiting for something to happen is almost worse than the event itself. I felt like I was being watched. My mother started acting strange, standing in my doorway at night, just staring at me while I slept. I would feel someone lying in bed behind me, but when I turned around, the space was empty. I would hear footsteps following me up the stairs, step for step, but when I stopped, the invisible person stopped too. The situation escalated beyond our small circle. Suddenly, the university announced a 2-week closure for urgent maintenance. But we knew the truth through whispers between students and staff. Dark things were happening within those walls. The administration had started finding disturbing things, headless dolls and filth hidden in corners where students never go, clear signs of dark rituals. One of the janitors claimed she saw a young girl wandering the halls after hours. She chased her, trying to find out who she was, but the child vanished into thin air right in the middle of a hallway. People started linking these events to Maya's disappearance and Chloe's breakdown. The university reopened the investigation into Maya's files, but they found something impossible. The entire shelf where her file was kept had been completely burned. Only her file and the ones immediately next to it were ashes. Every physical trace of her existence was being erased by an unseen fire. I couldn't take it anymore. I dropped out of university. I couldn't walk those halls without feeling her presence. But Mia stayed, and months later, she told me the stories were still spreading. A student claimed she saw Maya in the restroom, combing her hair. But when the girl looked in the mirror, there was no reflection, just a dark shape standing there. Maya was still there, haunting the place where she hunted us. Today, our lives are ruined. I still live in fear, keeping my room filled with protective symbols and white noise to drown out the footsteps. Sarah is still suffering. Her health is destroyed, and her hair never grew back. Every time it starts to, it falls out again. Chloe is in a trance-like state, unable to recognize who we are. And Alina. Alina is still in that psychiatric ward, fighting shadows we can't see. The story ends here, but I don't feel like Maya is finished. Her plan was interrupted when the house changed its shape and we grew suspicious. So she vanished to start again. I am certain she was practicing dark arts, and she is out there right now, looking for her next group of friends. She is not alone. There are many like her in this world, people who hide their twisted souls behind kind smiles and helpful gestures. They wait for you to be at your weakest. They win your trust. And then they destroy you for no reason other than their own darkness. So be careful. Watch who you let into your life. Don't just look at the smile. Look at what's hidden behind it. I'm Jenny, and I hope you stay safe, because you never know who is sitting across from you in the cafeteria. Don't forget to like and subscribe unless you want Maya to pay you a visit tonight. See you in the next story, if you're still here.